They said an emperor cannot tremble, that the weight of the world must rest on his shoulders without cracking his spine. But what happens when the chaos outside mirrors the storm within? I wasn't facing a battlefield. I was facing something far more dangerous. A betrayal that struck not from across enemy lines, but from within the walls of my trust. A friend, a brother in arms, a man I would have given my life to protect, now plotting to take what I had spent my life defending. That morning, Rome was still. But inside me, a war had begun, and I had to make a choice, not between victory or defeat, but between the man the world expected me to be and the man I truly was. How did I face that moment without losing myself? Let me take you back to that hour. The letter arrived just before dawn, sealed in wax and folded with trembling hands. Its bearer was quiet, a young guard, eyes low. He said nothing. He didn't need to. I recognized the crest before I broke the seal, my closest advisor, Lucianus. Inside, only a few lines written in haste. Lines that would fracture the illusion of control I had so carefully built across decades. The general has turned. He means to move on the Senate. Your name will be called into question. Your principles mocked. He seeks to own Rome, but he will begin by breaking you. There it was. Treason, not in the field, but in the heart of my own circle. My first instinct wasn't rage. It wasn't fear. It was silence. A silence so complete it felt like the world had stopped moving, so I could hear myself think. And in that stillness, I asked, what part of me does this touch? That question, it saved me. I had long been trained in the teachings of the Stoics. But teachings mean nothing when untested. Philosophy is not a wall against fire. It's a bridge through it. That morning, I was about to find out if I had built that bridge strong enough to carry me. What does chaos really threaten? My title? My empire? My pride? None of those belonged to me, not truly. They were garments. Borrowed. Temporary. But my reason? My integrity? My ability to choose how I respond, that was mine. That was the citadel no traitor could breach unless I left the gates open myself. So I did what may seem strange to those who wear crowns. I went for a walk. Alone. No guards. No armor. Just me and the morning light cracking over the rooftops of Rome. Each step reminded me, I am not this throne. I am not their praise nor their hatred. I am the space between my first breath and my last decision. I am the one who chooses what to do now. The world does not owe me fairness. It never did. A calm sea does not train a skilled sailor. And I, an emperor, a father, a man, had to sail this storm without forgetting who I was. Lucianus's betrayal was not a flaw in the system. It was a test of mine. I remember passing by an olive tree on the path that morning, its limbs twisted and wind-beaten, scarred by decades of sun and frost. And yet it stood, not because it resisted the storm, but because it learned to bend without breaking. There was wisdom in its silence. As I returned to the palace, I made no proclamations. No revenge was plotted, no swords unsheathed. I summoned the Senate, not to accuse, but to tell the truth. Calmly, plainly, without rage. The room bristled. They expected fire. I gave them form. Let us not descend into madness simply because one man has lost his way, I said. If we answer chaos with chaos, then what have we preserved? Some called me weak that day. But power is not in how loudly you strike, it's in how firmly you stand when struck. Lucianus was arrested. He did not resist. In his eyes, I saw the same thing I'd wrestled with that morning, the terror of facing one's own choices. He asked me quietly before he was taken away, "Why didn't you destroy me?" I answered, "Because if I did, I'd be destroying myself with you." You see, the world can strip you of every title, every possession, every illusion of control. But your judgment, your reasoned will, that is untouchable unless you hand it over. When chaos arrives, most people react like flint struck against stone, sparks, heat, fire. But I chose to be like water, still, deep, reflective. That is not passivity. That is discipline. That is strength. And in time, even those who doubted me came to understand. An emperor who does not lose himself in the storm becomes the anchor for the ship. That day, I learned something deeper than any scroll had ever taught me. Your enemy is not the chaos. Your enemy is the voice inside that says, "Become like them." But if you resist that voice, you do not just survive the storm. You become the calm. Later that evening, as the last embers of sun withdrew behind the hills, I sat alone in the chamber where my father once gave me counsel. The walls were lined with stone, cold and indifferent, much like the Senate hours before. But in that indifference, there was something pure, eternal. Stone does not flatter. It does not betray. It simply endures. I let my eyes rest on a bronze bust of my predecessor. His eyes, though molded in metal, seemed to ask, "Did you hold the line?" I nodded in silence. You see, chaos comes in many forms. Not just in the uprisings of men, but in the subtle erosion of your own convictions. The slow wear of pride, or the seductive whisper of vengeance. The world is not loud with explosions. It is loud with temptations to become something less than what you are. And in that quiet chamber, I recalled something my mother once said when I was only a boy. Marcus, strength is not born in the roar. It is born in the restraint to remain silent when silence is harder. I did not understand it then, but I do now. So I took out the journal I keep hidden behind a false panel in my desk. My private thoughts, my fortress of self. And I began to write, not as an emperor, but as a man grappling with himself. Today I was tested, not by war, but by something greater, betrayal. And yet, I am still here, still whole, because I remembered that my peace cannot be given or taken. It must be maintained from within. I faced fire and chose not to burn. This is the purpose of philosophy, not for idle thought, but for survival of the soul. We do not read Epictetus to admire him. We read him to remember how to live. When I walked among the soldiers the next day, they did not see the weight I carried. They saw only my posture, my gaze, steady, measured, and I realized this is what Rome needed from me most. Not reaction, but reflection. Leadership is not performance. It is presence, and presence requires self-command. I watched one of the younger soldiers training in the courtyard. He was strong, swift, but impulsive. His blade struck with force, but no aim. I approached him and asked, "What do you fight for?" He paused. "For Rome. For honor." "No," I said gently. "That is what you say. But in truth, you fight to prove something. To silence some doubt in yourself. Until you make peace with that, your strength will be scattered." He looked away, embarrassed. But I was not there to shame him. I was there to show him what had taken me years to understand. We do not conquer the world. We conquer the need to. Only then can we act without being ruled by the very chaos we seek to defeat. Later that night, I received word that the people were murmuring. Some called me indecisive. Others praised my temperance. The winds of opinion shifted like sand. But I did not chase them. If your sense of worth rises and falls with the voice of the crowd, you will be a slave to noise. But if your anchor is within, no tide can uproot you. Still, doubts crept in. Even emperors are not immune to them. What if I had acted more forcefully? What if I had silenced Lucianus before he acted? What if mercy was seen as weakness? These thoughts circled my mind like wolves circling a campfire. But I let them circle. I did not run. I did not panic. I watched them, and slowly, one by one, they faded. Because here is the truth: you cannot stop the chaos from coming. But you can choose whether it finds you flailing or standing. It is easy to rule when things go well. But your true self emerges when the world turns against you. When you're stripped of applause, of comfort, of advantage, and yet you remain whole. That is the marrow of Stoicism. Not denial of pain, but clarity in the midst of it. Not retreat from hardship, but presence within it. I am not marble. I bleed. I doubt. I falter. But I return. I always return to the center. To the quiet place inside that cannot be touched by flattery or hatred or fear. You have that place too. We all do. And when chaos comes, and it will, it is to that place you must return. Not to the noise, not to revenge, but to the truth of your character. There, you are untouchable. There, you will not lose yourself. The Senate reconvened under a gray sky, its stones damp with morning rain. There was a weight in the air, not of politics, but of unspoken fear. The kind that cloaks itself in rhetoric and ceremony. Men spoke of laws and legions, but what they truly feared was disorder, losing the illusion of control. As I entered, all voices quieted, not out of reverence, but anticipation. They wanted to know what I would say, what the emperor, this so-called philosopher king, would do in the face of sedition. And so I spoke, not to please them, not to crush them, but to realign them. Do you believe a man is made stronger by violence? I asked. No answer. Do you believe the republic is kept by silence? By looking away from the seeds of its own decay? Still silence. Then I said, the strength of Rome is not in her sword, but in her discipline. Her ability to endure storms without becoming the storm. There was murmuring. Discomfort. Good. Let them wrestle with it. I returned to my quarters afterward and stood at the window, watching the rain trace quiet paths down the marble columns. The city below pulsed with life. Market stalls opened. Children shouted in alleys. Life, unconcerned with our debates, continued. This is what I serve. Not titles, not monuments, not history's verdict, but the ordinary soul who seeks to live with dignity amid the tempest. I remembered then a time, early in my reign, when the northern provinces had rebelled. I had ridden out with the legions. We camped in frost-covered hills for nights without end, and I had watched men freeze, not from cold, but from indecision. They waited for orders, for courage, for clarity, and I gave them none, not out of cruelty, but trust. Because when the storm rages and no command is given, the true soldier reveals himself. Either he cowers, or he stands. So I stood with them, wordless, until the sun rose. And when it did, we moved, not as pawns awaiting instruction, but as men who had remembered their purpose. I have always believed this. Chaos is not an enemy. It is a teacher. And it teaches most clearly when you have no one left to echo your comfort back to you. In that silence, you meet yourself. What do you believe? Truly? What will you still hold when the crowd turns? What remains when you lose what you cannot control? Those answers are not found in speeches or scrolls. They are found in quiet acts, returning kindness when wounded, restraining wrath when justified, speaking truth when silence would be safer. The man who can master his mind in chaos is not merely free, he is unshakable. And the world cannot conquer what it cannot disturb. As night fell again over the Palatine, I lit a small flame in my chamber. Not for warmth, but for remembrance. A symbolic act. The Stoics taught that we must light our own inner fire, one that does not flicker when the winds of fortune blow. I sat before it and whispered to myself, as I often do when no ears are near. You are not what happens to you. You are what you choose to become in response to it. Even now, as I write these words to you, centuries ahead, I do not know what tomorrow brings. I may be remembered or forgotten, my decisions praised or condemned, but none of that belongs to me. Only the moment. Only the self I guard in that moment. So when you too find yourself surrounded by noise, by confusion, by betrayal, remember that you are not there to control the chaos. You are there to remain unbroken by it. And in doing so, you become more than a reaction. You become an example. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "Circumstances don't rise to meet your expectations. You rise to meet the circumstances." These words have echoed through every chamber of my soul, especially in the loneliest moments of power. Power, you see, is not control. It is responsibility. And the highest responsibility is to govern the self. I have sat in rooms full of generals whispering of conquest and left untouched. I have walked through streets where mobs cried for blood and held my hands still. I have lost those dearest to me and swallowed my grief like fire, letting it shape me instead of consume me. This is what the world rarely teaches us. To win against chaos is not to silence it, but to hear it without obeying it. There is a vast difference between calm and indifference. The Stoic does not retreat from life. He enters it fully, wounds, noise, unpredictability, and chooses clarity in the midst of the whirlwind. He feels the trembling, the rage, the ache, but he does not become them. That is strength. Too many imagine that being unshakable means being emotionless. But I tell you, nothing is more alive than the man who feels deeply yet remains rooted. One evening, after suppressing a revolt, I visited a wounded soldier who had taken an arrow to the lung. He was young, barely grown into his armor, and his hands trembled with the chill of death. I asked him, "Are you afraid?" He nodded. "Good," I told him. "That means your heart still lives. Let it remind you who you are, not what you fear." He didn't survive the night, but he died a man who understood this. Fear is not failure. Losing control is not defeat. The only true failure is to forget who you are when the world forgets who it needs you to be. So I ask you now, who are you when the storm begins? Because life will not ask for your permission. It will not wait for you to be ready. It will test you in the dark, in the silence, when no one is watching. And it is in that silence that your foundation is revealed. Do not wait for order to be restored to find peace. Become the source of peace. Be the quiet in the riot, the light in the ash, the still hand that pulls another from drowning, even while your own lungs burn. This is not a fable. I am not speaking to you from myth. I lived just as you do now. I bled. I failed. I loved. I buried my children. I stood atop Rome and asked the heavens why. And then I turned inward and found the answer waiting in the stillness. You cannot change the winds, but you can adjust your sail. You cannot escape the fire, but you can walk through it upright. And if you do, if you resist the pull to become bitter, vengeful, numb, you will not only survive the chaos, you will transform through it. Because chaos is not here to destroy you. It's here to reveal you. It is the flame that burns away all that is not essential, until only the core remains, pure, forged, and unyielding. So ask yourself, not just in times of crisis, but every single morning, who am I becoming today? And let your answer be this: I am the calm within the storm. I am the master of my response. I am not what happens to me. I am what I choose to become. Let that be the creed written not just in your journal, but in your conduct, your choices, your silence when tempted to shout, your action when fear says wait. Let that be your transformation. Not dramatic, not loud, but powerful, enduring, invisible, until the day someone else looks to you and says, "How did you survive?" And you, like me, will simply smile and answer, "I remembered who I was."